Sure.
Okay, welcome to Women in Comics with Trina Robbins. Hello, Trina.
Hi.
And Stacey Hayashi.
Aloha.
And we're supposed to have another member, but hopefully she'll show up while we're going. But in the meantime, Trina, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, I would actually, by the way, this is really interesting because it's kind of mirror image. So I'm actually facing you. But the more I look at you, the more I'm looking that way. Oh, thank you. That's better, really. Stacey, I want to know where we can get your book.
Oh, I just posted it in the mini jam on the mini, not the jam, the mini con group. So there's a web page, and then you can buy it, and I can mail it. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And will you sign it?
Yeah, of course.
Good. Okay. Because we want your book.
Oh.
All right. So I guess let's introduce ourselves. Hello, everybody. I'm Trina Robbins, and I've been writing and drawing comics since we chiseled them in stone. So that's what I do. Stacey, introduce yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're a pioneer.
I guess I am.
Yeah.
But at the time, I didn't think of it in those terms. I didn't think, gee, I'm a pioneer, you know?
You just thought, I want to do that. I'm going to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So my name is Stacey Hayashi, and I wrote a comic book called Journey of Heroes, and it's the story of the 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which is the most highly decorated unit in U.S. military history. And ironic because it's a bunch of, well, it was started in Hawaii, you know, like a bunch of Japanese Americans. And of course, everyone knows we were attacked by Japan, you know, so December 7th was, of course, a day of infamy for everyone, but particularly awful for the Japanese Americans in Hawaii. Yeah. And then
I guess reading your book we'll find out, huh?
Yeah.
Find out what happened.
It's a very concise history. It's 30 pages. It's like 70 years of history in 30 pages. And then, so the guys behind me are real life people, veterans who helped me. This is Eddie Yamasaki, and that's Goro Sumida. And then later I made a movie.
Yes.
And so the first 10 pages of the comic book is the timeline of the movie. And it's called Go for Broke, an Origin Story.
Were you going to show us the trailer for the movie?
Oh, yeah. Mike has it. We can show it later or now. I mean, whenever.
Whatever you would like.
Just let me know when.
While we're waiting for the third person, maybe we could look at your trailer.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah.
1 second.
It is inevitable that Japan and America will be at war. It's unpleasant to think of it, but you will have to choose a side.
We are all good, loyal Americans.
Diplomacy with Japan is failing.
Get more than one war at stake. Can't I just be in the army? It's not enough.
Shut these guys up about who you're loyal to.
The military is saying we're doing a good job. What we're doing is important. It's all a big shibai.
The army doesn't want Japs guarding Hawaii.
Whether the government trusts you or not, they need you. You know that.
What if we die? You'll tell me we're all coming home. We should just all quit.
If we do, that's the end of it. And the AJAs in Hawaii won't have anyone to represent them.
Not just be good soldiers. Gotta be the best there ever was.
Because you paved the way for AJAs back to the army.
you have to show your colors. Because all eyes are on you.
Okay, now I want to see the movie too.
Yay! So these same guys are in the movie as well, and real life veterans. Like, in fact, our former U.S. Senator Dan Akaka he has a little cameo in the movie as well, and he's also a World War II veteran.
Surprisingly, Moana McAdams, I think you know her, Stacey, right?
I don't. I've just seen her
I figured
post.
she's
Yeah,
a writer here in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
She says she's never heard of the movie. She wants to know where she can watch it.
Oh gosh. Oh, so goforbrokemovie.com. There's a link to the Vimeo, or you can go straight to the Vimeo. It's on demand. It's on the post in the Comic Con, the Minicon post.
Is it playing in any theaters?
It did, but since we're independent, we had to rent the theater ourselves. So that's expensive, but yeah, and it played. Are you in Southern California or
No?
Northern?
I'm in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. So it did play in San Francisco, but that was like at a film festival, like the Asian American Film Festival, CAMFest, Center for Asian American Media. Yeah.
I wish I had known.
Yeah, and that was before COVID too, anyway. But
yeah, a long time ago.
How
long's the movie? I think it's 94 minutes. Yeah.
Well, we'll watch it and we'll buy the comic.
Yay! The opening credits are the comic book. So
great. That's great.
Kind of fun. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know if you guys know who Jake Shimabukuro is, but he's an.
I do.
You do. So
wonderful.
He's in the movie.
Greatest ukulele player in the world.
Yeah, he is, and he's a friend of mine from high school. So
oh my God,
I had him write my soundtrack, and then I put him in the movie. So it's his acting debut. Yeah, that was really great.
So, any questions from the audience?
Not so far, other than where to find the movie. Can we go back a bit though? Because Trina, as Stacey pointed out, you're kind of an icon, a groundbreaker. How did you get started?
Okay, we're going all the way back to the 60s when Batman was on TV. Have you ever seen any of the early Batmans?
Adam West?
Yes, Adam West.
Yeah. I saw him at a panel.
Oh, wow.
In New York Comic Con.
Well, we all adored it, and it was like pop art. Pop art was happening too. And I had always drawn, of course. But I didn't know what I was drawing until I saw Batman. And then I realized, oh, what I'm drawing is comics. Oh, John Murakami. Hi, John. I realized that what I was drawing was comics. And so I decided to do a comic. But all I knew, in those days, all you knew was superheroes. So I tried to do a superhero comic, and it didn't work because I'm not a superhero artist, Most women are not, by the way. Most women are simply not interested in guys with big muscles punching each other out. Comics have changed so much since then, But so I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do comics, but it wasn't superheroes because, like I say, I tried, but I couldn't finish it because it was just not me. And then someone showed me a copy of an underground newspaper called the East Village Other. Evo for short, EVO. And they had comics, but they weren't superhero comics. They were, at the time there was still no word for it. They weren't calling them underground comics. I just was calling them hip comics because they were about like my lifestyle, about hippies and counterculture people. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And specifically, I saw this full-page comic called Gentle's Trip Out. And it was signed by Panzika. And it wasn't until 2 years after I saw the comic, that I discovered that Panzika was a woman. So I would say that my first influence was a woman. And I realized that's what I wanted to do. They were very designy. They didn't necessarily make sense. Some people say, well, you had to be stoned to get it. But they were just pretty. And my first comics were just pretty. They were just pretty and designing. And it was about that time, because I'd been living in Los Angeles. It was about that time that I went to New York. And one of the first things I did when I went to New York was I looked up the East Village Other, because a friend of mine was managing editor there. So because I had a friend there, I got to meet the editor and the publisher and, you know, the whole crew. And I drew, after meeting them, I drew a little comic, kind of an comic, like not quite a comic yet, but almost a comic, because it was just one picture and a huge speech balloon. And I went to deliver it to the East Village Other. It was like my idea of a little note, just saying, "Hi, I'm glad to meet you." And no one was there, so I stuck it under the door. And I phoned them the next day. I spoke to the publisher. I said, "Did you get my comic?" And he said, "Oh yeah, we're printing it in the next issue." So voila, that's how my first published comic, and that's how I got started.
That's awesome.
That you can ignore that one. That's in the wrong spot.
What was that?
That comment's in the wrong spot, I think.
What's in the wrong spot?
No, the comment. That's fine. Continue on.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry to derail it there.
It wasn't really until about 2 years later that I realized I wasn't even thinking in terms of, gee, I'm the only woman. But about 2 years later, I started realizing I was the only woman in underground comics, and all the others were guys. And unfortunately, a lot of them were doing very sexist stuff. I mean, really, really seriously sexist stuff. And I would say things like, well, rape and murder of women, that's not funny. And they would say, you have no sense of humor. So I became a feminist, and I'm still a feminist.
Yay.
Okay, so if we could take it over to Stacey then, like you didn't set out to make the comic, from what I understand. How did you end up here?
Yeah, right. So I was also in a male-dominated profession. I was a software engineer, and I was the only woman in an office full of men.
Gee, this is sounding familiar.
Yeah. And then there are these tax credits, you know, for IP industries in Hawaii. And they, on the last minute, they tacked on film. And I thought, oh, I know what should be a movie, you know, this story of the 100th Battalion, 442nd Regimental Combat Team. And I just thought, you know, knowing nothing, I was like, oh, I'll hunt down the playwright from this play that I saw. We'll turn it into a movie. How hard can it be? You know, like, not having any idea how ridiculously difficult it would be. And that journey took me on, like, gosh, I worked on that thing for like 15 years before we finally got the money, and then we shot it. So I started working on it in like 2001. We finally filmed it the ending of 2016. and I think it was the comic book that helped it along the way, because I mean, people in Hawaii, and the film school hadn't even come up yet. You know, it didn't exist. And I think it started in 2002 or something. So I didn't even have, you know, like a film department, you know, to be like, hey, you know, young graduates, let's go do this. You know, it was just like starting from complete scratch, not knowing anything. And then, you know, like maybe 8 years in of working on this film, realizing, oh my gosh, it's so expensive and impossible. And then the economy crashed, and I was sitting with like a writer, and I'd gone through like 3 writers and 3 directors before finally deciding I just need to write this myself. And I, you know, I was kind of forced into that too, because, you know, like one of these flaky, you know, writer directors had made off with like $5,000 of my cash.
Oh my God.
Like and so hard lesson to learn. But, you know, a friend of mine, Titus Chong, was like, why don't we write something? And I was like, I don't know how to write a movie script, you know, and he's like, that's okay. I do. And you know the story. So we'll do something, you know, and that's kind of how that started. And then, you know, we were writing, and then the economy tanked. And I was like, man, we're working so hard on this and nobody's got any money. This movie's never going to get made. It's not like you can bind the movie script and people don't know how to read a movie script, you know? And then I thought, oh my God, a comic book, you know, because it's like storyboards, right? And it's a much more natural flow, I think. So I called Jake and because I had, you know, he was a friend from high school, but I bumped into him, you know, a few years prior. And I was like, hey, I'm working on this movie, you know, can you write the soundtrack? And he was like, yeah, sure. But, you know, it's hard to write a soundtrack if there's no movie. But he always supported the idea. So I called him and I'm like, what do you think about a comic book? And he's like, yeah, I love it. I'll play, we'll fundraise, we'll make it happen. So that's how that started. Yeah. So Jake has been with me for a while too, you know, like I want to say that was like 2008, 2009. Yeah.
Well, I'm a big fan of his. I actually was taking ukulele, but but my ukulele is pathetic. I hope to take it again and maybe improve, but I can appreciate someone who's really great at it. Of course, you know, it's so much easier to do a comic than a movie. I mean, a movie needs so many people. In a comic, you just sit there with a pencil and a piece of paper, and you've got a comic.
Well, if you can draw, I can't draw. I drew stick figures. So,
I don't draw anymore either, you know, but there's a lot of artists out there, and they're really good.
I very talented one. Oh, and then on the next, so I have another project that I'm trying to work on, although I've been sort of derailed by, I've had a tough year personally, but here, John Murakami. So this is Eddie, the chibi, and so I don't know if you know, but there's this stamp. It's the Go for Broke stamp, and so after 15 years, and so it's a postage stamp, and so I had John draw this for the launching of that stamp, but that was back in June, and so. But the real guy on the stamp is a friend too, like, and he supported my comic book and my movie, Whitey Yamamoto. So it's just a little sad that he wasn't around. He passed away, you know, before he could see himself on the stamp. But anyway, so that's the next project. Hopefully, comic book and then movie. I don't know.
That stamp.
Yeah, about the rescue of the Lost Battalion of Texas in the Vosges Mountains of France. And actually, well, it's a two-parter, so that's the second part. But the first part would be the liberation of the town of Bruyere and Bifontaine. So Honolulu and Bruyere are sister cities because the 10442 liberated them from Nazis in 1944.
Oh, this is all stuff I want to read about and I want to learn more. We went to Normandy. It was the year after the anniversary of the Normandy invasion, but it was still, you know, they had lots, you know, in all these little villages we went to, they had lots of information. All of them had signs saying,
their museums,
you know, what happened. Yeah, what happened on that day, and it was really amazing.
Yeah. And so there's a World War II Normandy Film Festival that Tim Gray and the World War II Foundation puts on. And so Go for Broke won the Outstanding Feature Film.
Oh, yeah.
So we played it in Normandy in 2018, I think. But it was really cool because people will travel, you know, to Normandy and Bastogne for the Battle of the Bulge of those anniversaries from all over the world, like mostly Europe, of course, but, you know, they're there. But, you know, those people have never heard of the 10442. So, or what happened in Hawaii, you know, they have no idea that almost half the population in Hawaii, the local population, was Japanese or Japanese American. So, you know, because everybody knows what Pearl Harbor looked like. I mean, that footage is just like iconic and, you know, just embedded. But, you know, so it was really nice to show it in Normandy to these people who, you know, like Pearl Harbor, they know that. But other than that, that's it, right? And just words to them. And so, and then it was kind of cool. The Band of Brothers cast presented our award. So that's pretty cool.
That's really nice. Yeah. Did you meet any French people who had lived in Normandy at the time?
You know, not people, well, for Normandy, but like in the this HBO series Band of Brothers, there's this place where Popeye Wynn, one of the one of the veterans in real life, of course, he gets shot in the butt, but that's at Breakcore Manor, and so I was just really fortunate to be staying with a group. They were tour guides. And they were from that area, so they knew all these people in real life. So I got to meet the descendant of the people at Breakcore Manor, and they have their own drink, right? It's Calvados. It's the apple brandy. Yeah.
Sounds good. I could use them right now. But I have tea.
Stuff. Yeah, but what a lot of people don't know is that those same Nazis that were at Normandy, they're the ones that the same unit actually fought against the 100th Battalion 442nd in the Vosges Mountains of France, too, later that year.
I want to learn about all of this. Didn't we have a third guest here? What happened?
Is she here?
She hasn't shown up yet. I'm not sure what happened to Sloane.
Is she in Hawaii?
I think she's
in
California.
Portland.
I wondered if she got the time wrong too, like I did.
Yeah, I'll message her again.
Everyone who's watching this should know that I was thrift shopping with my daughter, and suddenly it was after 2, and I knew that there was a panel at 3. And I was in a panic and said, we got to get home. I'm on a panel at 3. And it wasn't until I tried to connect to the panel that I realized that, of course, for me, it was 5 o'clock, not 3. So, but I made it.
I'm going to try messaging Sloane, but I can't promise that she'll get it. So.
I just wondered if she also got the time mixed up. But if she's in Hawaii.
No, she's on the West Coast also.
Oh, she is. Then I bet she got the time mixed up too.
Okay. I have a question for you, Trina.
Yes.
So, like working with these guys, these World War II veterans, of course, it was really cool, and a lot of them became very dear friends. But I thought it might tickle you to know that working on Wonder Woman is so iconic. Like they would, I would do things, and I'm a lot younger than they were or are. And so one of them, Ted Tsukiyama, he'd be like, "Hey, it's Wonder Woman," when I would show up.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Or Supergirl, like comic book heroes.
Sure. Everyone knows Wonder Woman.
Yeah. So what was it like? I mean, like, did you tell me about that?
Well, I at the time, when I did that one, the Wonder Woman series, the 4-parter in 1986, I didn't know that I was the first woman to draw Wonder Woman. It's like I've never known all the things that I do that turn out to be firsts. When I do them, I don't know they're firsts. I just do them. But the thing is that Wonder Woman's original artist, Harry G. Peter, was really wonderful. And to me, the Wonder Woman he drew is the only real Wonder Woman. And so when I did this, it was my opportunity to do an homage to Harry G. Peter and do it in his style, which is what I did. I had a huge stack of vintage Wonder Woman comics, by my side, all drawn by Harry G. Peter, that I could refer to, that I could see how he did it. So it was nice. It was nice. And very recently, I think, in fact, the last year before the lockdown at the San Diego Con, they finally voted Harry G. Peter into the Comic Book Hall of Fame. And because he doesn't seem to have any relatives, or at least they didn't know of any relatives, I got to accept his award for him. And I got to give a very, very short speech about how he's really underappreciated. And really, he is half of the creative team that created Wonder Woman. I mean, William Moulton Marston wrote it, but it was Harry G. Peter who designed her. And every Wonder Woman since then, her costume has always been some variation on the original design by Harry G. Peter. And he, as I said, he's underappreciated. So I was very happy to accept his award for him.
That's really cool. That was perfect.
Yes,
that you got to
it was.
accept it. Yeah.
Well, they knew that I'm a big fan of his work, you know. Maybe someday we'll meet, you know, in heaven. And I can give him his award.
I went as Wonder Woman Halloween. Remember the underoos? Well, actually, I didn't wear the underoos out because that was underwear. But
you actually have Wonder Woman underoos?
There
Oh
were,
my God.
yeah, and I wasn't gonna wear that out of the house, but I did make a different, not underoos, but I did have the underoos too.
That's my dream, is like to find a pair of Wonder Woman underoos. You know, last time, was it last time or the time before that? When we went to the convention, to the MauiCon, it just so happened that it was Halloween. And so I did, you know, they do this thing where they kind of block off the main drag and everybody is in costume walking around.
French Street was crazy.
Yes, I bet it was. It's great. It's a great thing that they do. So I brought my Wonder Woman costume, and I was Wonder Woman for the big parade.
Are there pictures of this?
Sure, I'll have to send them to you, Stacey.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
I don't really know how to put pictures up on this, you know, but I'll send them to you. And Steve took photos. There were so many women dressed as Wonder Woman, and little girls too. And Steve took photos. Excuse me. He took photos of me with all the different Wonder Women. So I have a collection of photos.
That's so cool. And did he tell them, hey, she drew Wonder Woman?
No, he didn't.
What? Steve. That would have been so cool. I'm sure they would have thought that was really cool.
Oh, I thought it was cool anyway.
Yeah, wow. But the little girls would have known how cool that was.
I have a great picture of me with this adorable little girl. What's this question? How do you feel about all the future incarnations of Wonder Woman? Do you still follow? Well, you know, I don't buy Wonder Woman once a month, but I periodically I'll pass a comic book store and go in and just buy the latest Wonder Woman. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's awful. They sent me a bunch. Oh, yes, they did. It wasn't a bunch. It was about 2 or 3. But yeah, it depends on who's doing her. That's the thing. You know, some people obviously love her and they do such a good job, and others don't really seem to care, or they have an image for Wonder Woman that does not match my image. Let's put it that way. I have gotten to write some other Wonder Woman stories since then. There was a Wonder Woman 77 that took place in the 1970s, and Wonder Woman was Linda Carter, who I, of course, adore. And I wrote some stories, some Wonder Woman 77 stories.
But yeah, I remember that's the series coming out, yeah. Because they did the Wonder Woman 77 and the Batman 66 as comics, so about the same time.
More questions.
John, you have more questions? Sandy, Moana, Fireman. Looking at everybody that's here. It's commented so far.
Gee, if I was watching this, I would be full of questions.
Yeah. It's like, take advantage of this. So, obviously, starting off in a male-dominated industry, how do you break out of that?
Oh, well, you just don't give up. You know, I mean, it was not good. I mean, the guys, there was kind of a clique in the early days of underground comics, let's say around 1970, when I had gone back to California. I was living in San Francisco, where I still live. And there was kind of a clique. There was a little group of underground cartoonists. They had all, you know, they'd all been drawing since about, 68 or so. which is really only 2 years. And they were doing books, but they were not inviting me. I was not included. I was persona non grata. But, so what? The hell with them. I did my own comics. And the thing is that if the publishers were fine with me, my problem was never the comic publishers. They just wanted to publish something that was good and that would sell. And I was good and I did sell. So that wasn't the problem. If the problem was the guys who just didn't want anything to do with me.
They were threatened.
You've written a few books on women in comics.
Have a few, yes.
Yeah. Would you like to talk about some of those?
Sure.
John does have a comment on Wonder Woman 77.
How do you feel about the comics industry nowadays? Superman 78, which looks like the actors from the movies and TV series. Yes, Batman 67.
And this is Vincent asking this question.
I don't really follow, periodically I'll see one. I'll go into a comic book store and see something that I like. But I don't really follow anyone. I do have some favorites, people who are really, really good. And I look for their stuff. Jean Yang is incredible. Suddenly all the other names are out of my head. Alison Bechtel, who I adore, her books. Mostly what I get is graphic novels because comics are kind of a ripoff. I mean, 20 pages of really, you're paying, how much do the comics cost these days? And you're paying really a fortune for 20 pages, half of which are just fight scenes. But the graphic novels are much better, and graphic novels tend not to be superheroes, or at least you don't have to be superheroes if you want to do a graphic novel. There's so much more. So that's what I look for. I look for really good graphic novels.
So this is Vincent. Jean Yang is really great.
Jean Yang is really great. Isn't he amazing?
John is asking if Trina has any connection with Vampirella.
Oh, I'm so tired of talking about Vampirella. All I did, people think that I created her. I didn't create her. All I did was I designed her costume. I was visiting Jim Warren, who was the publisher of Vampirella, and showing him my work, which wasn't the kind of stuff they wanted at Vampirella. I was an underground cartoonist. And he was letting me down very nicely. He's always been really, really nice to me. And there was a phone call, and it was from Frank Frazetta. He had asked, Vampirella wasn't out yet. He was just putting it together. He had asked Frank Frazetta to do the cover. And he didn't like the costume that Frazetta put her in. I think he had just stuck her in a bikini. He wanted more than that. And so as he was talking to him, I sketched out the costume and passed it to him. And he said, just a minute, there's a young lady here who knows exactly what I want. And he put me on, and I described the costume to Frank Frazetta. And that was how he did it, just from my description, because we didn't have face-to-face, yet. It was all over the phone. And I actually never met him, ever. But he's very nice on the phone.
Trina, I'm scouring the internet as we talk, but I did find a couple photos that I think we can show. Give me just a second to get the share set up. Does this look familiar?
Oh, that's me in about 1967 or 68. Wow. In the window of my boutique. I had a boutique in the Lower East Side. And those are clothes that I designed, including that little flag dress where I'm looking patriotic and saluting the flag.
Okay, let me see. I had one more.
And that's the cover of my book. That's the cover of my book, Last Girl Standing. That's me standing up there. Can't see my eyes because the bangs are so long. That's my ex-husband standing next to me wearing a shirt that I made. Everyone there is wearing clothes that I made, except that's Donovan in the middle. He's the only one who isn't dressed by me.
It's quite a head of hair.
That's cool.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought it might be fun to take a look at those. Yeah.
Those are all friends of mine wearing the clothes that I made them. In those days, if you were a friend of mine, you wound up with at least one outfit that I made.
Drew Gutierrez has a question for you. Let me get it up here.
Oh God, yes, that's a story. I don't know if you've read Sax Rohmer's Dope. Sax Rohmer was a really good blood and thunder pulp writer in the early 20th century. And we're going back to 1970 now, maybe 71. There was a store in San Francisco, a bookstore, that specialized in fantasy and science fiction, and they were closing, and they were selling every single one of their books for $1. So, of course, I went there, bought a bunch of books, and I saw this one, and on the cover it just said, Dope by Sax Rohmer. And I went, whoa, what's that about? I bought it. $1. How can you go wrong, right? And I put it, I always have a pile of books to read. I put it, on the top of my pile of books. But, pretty soon there were other books that were on top of that, because that's what happens. But I eventually got to Dope, and I sat down and read it. And I went, this has to be a graphic novel. So Eclipse was a publisher in the 80s that did black and white books. And they were very, very inclusive, and they liked me, which was nice because I liked them. And I serialized Dope for them with the aim that it would eventually, all the chapters would go together into graphic novel form. But that didn't work because they folded before they could do that. So now we have to come to, I guess 2 years ago or so, I think it was before the lockdown, when Drew Ford, who has a publishing company called It's Alive, he takes books that were published ages ago, comics that were published ages ago, and brings them back and reprints them. And he decided to reprint, finally, all the chapters of Dope into one graphic novel. And that's what he did, and you can still find it. Amazon.com, if nowhere else, but I'm sure you can find it in bookstores. And yes, it's racist. I talk about the racism in there. It was written in 1919, and the fact is that in 1919, everyone was racist. And if you're going to cancel every writer who was racist, then you're canceling Mark Twain, you're canceling F. Scott Fitzgerald. It goes on because people simply were. But his character, his Chinese character, Ah Sin, what a name. Ah Sin is not what you think he is. He comes off in the beginning as a very stereotyped Chinese man. But I'm not going to give it away, of course, but just small spoiler, he is not what he seems.
Drew is saying Rohmer wrote Fu Manchu also.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So you can tell, the kind of characters he wrote just by knowing that he created Fu Manchu.
It's strange because I remember Fu Manchu at the time, and it didn't dawn on me that he was a really racist stereotype.
You didn't? Really? Really?
Not at the time.
Okay, you know why? Because like I just said, everyone was racist. And so it was just normal. It was normal to have this stereotype.
Yeah. I was raised in Arizona, so that might have something to do with it too. Stacey, here's the thing. I should probably hand this over to Stacey because Stacey's a better interviewer than I am. Do you have questions for Trina?
Well, I wanted to express my appreciation for her calling out those guys. I don't even remember who the guy was, but it was just this very sexist, like skimpy clad, like objectifying women, and that's how she was saying earlier. It was just normal, right? The guys.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
If racism was normal, sexism was normal too. I mean, I was one of the few people who said, that's not funny. It's amazing how many people just thought that kind of stuff was a laugh riot. But we have changed. I hope.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Some of us have changed. But I think that we have to, like I said, I mean, Mark Twain, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Charles Dickens, they all were, either racist or anti-Semitic. Dickens, Fagin, that character. You can't cancel them because they're great writers. And you just have to understand that that was what people were like in those days. I went to see, there's a group that does Shakespeare in the Park, and that's what they're called, Shakespeare in the Park. They perform in Golden Gate Park. And I went to see The Taming of the Shrew with a whole group of lesbians. And we just laughed through the whole thing. I mean, you can't get insulted. The writing is wonderful. Shakespeare is, he's Shakespeare. But you also can't take it seriously. You can't get upset.
Yeah, and Shakespeare was basically dirty jokes and flowery language.
Kinda.
Vincent says, rather than canceling, I'd rather have access to writers like those so we can at least learn from them. You can't learn from mistakes if we don't see the mistakes.
Yes. Absolutely.
And Drew follows up with, I try to separate the art from the artist or else I can't enjoy anything.
That's right. Because, I mean, Picasso was a real rat with women. He was horrible to women, but you can't go, okay, in that case, I'll never look at a Picasso,
Yeah. Any other questions? Come on, folks. Pick Trina's brains.
Oh, don't pick my brains.
Hey, we can just do anecdotes. Like, it's like I know you have stories, like either good or bad. You want to share any?
I'm trying to think of a good story.
We don't have to name drop and call anybody out, but
No, I haven't mentioned any names except dead guys.
Vince is asking if we'll see more writing from you in the future.
Yes. Yes. I have a book that's coming out next spring. I don't want to talk about it because I feel like I'm jinxing it if I talk about it. But my latest book, which came out last year, The Flapper Queens, won an Eisner, which is the biggest award. It's the Oscar of the comic world. I think I have a copy here. I can show it to you.
Just casually has an Eisner Award laying around. I don't know if you can still hear us, Trina, but Drew and Cheryl Magata is asking, did you enjoy the Wonder Woman movies?
I enjoyed the first one. It was wonderful, but I hated the second one.
Oh, good. I don't feel so bad.
It was. Oh, you hated it too. And why did they make it in the 80s? What were they thinking? Why 1984? I mean, that's so weird. And they didn't really use the cheetah. She happens to be my favorite villain. And, you had to wait before you even saw her in a cheetah outfit. I mean, it seemed like all that the magic did to her was it made her able to run fast in high-heel shoes. It was a waste of time. It was very disappointing. But the first one was incredible. The first one was like liberation. I was so fortunate because I was invited to the premiere in Hollywood. That was the most glamorous moment of my life, really, because they had a party afterwards. And, I didn't get up close to Gal Gadot, but she was there. But I did take a picture with Linda Carter. But before the movie, the theater was full of expectant, excited women. And just when the screen lit up, when it just started, one woman shouted out, "I've waited my whole life for this." And that was so great because that was what we all felt. We had waited our whole lives for this. This is what an Eisner looks like. And this is the book that won the Eisner. Flapper Queens. I'm very proud of it. It is gorgeous, if I do say so myself.
And that's available on Amazon?
Yes, and maybe even in your own comic store somewhere, in your local comic store. Ask them to order it for you. Always patronize your local comic book store before you look for it on Amazon.
Excellent advice. Stacey, on your side, did you read comics growing up?
I'm sorry?
Did you read comics growing up?
I did. Yeah, and actually, and I mentioned this to Stan Lee when I met him. He couldn't remember my name, but I said my name is Stacey because of Gwen Stacy. So
that's great.
Yeah, like my dad wanted to name me, I don't know, something long, like Catherine, call me Cat for short. My mom was like, no. And then he was, well, what about Stephanie? And Steph for short. And she was like, no. And then he was like, what about Stacy? And he's thinking about Gwen Stacy because she was nice to Peter Parker when he was a nerd. And that was when, Mary was still being me. Mary Jane was still being me to him. and yeah, he just thought, man, she was the first major character to get killed off, And she was really nice. So
I have a Stan Lee story. I think it was 1977. I went to New York. I was living in San Francisco, and I took my daughter, my 7-year-old daughter, Casey, and we went to Marvel Comics to visit Flo Steinberg, who was a friend of mine, and we met with Stan Lee, who was lovely, absolutely lovely, and we had a lovely conversation. But Casey wanted to ask him something, and I told him, I said, my daughter has a question for you. And he said, yes. And she said, where are the super women? Because there really were very few. And he took a copy of Ms. Marvel #1 he had a spinner rack of comics. He took a copy of Ms. Marvel #1, and he just, because, he's quite tall, he kind of accordioned himself down to Casey's size and handed her the copy and said, now there is. And that's my story. And she brought it home, and now I have it because somewhere along the way I got it.
Vincent Kukua points out that Flapper Queens is available directly from Fantagraphics as well.
Oh, yes, of course. Buy it from the publisher. They are wonderful publishers. Oh, I love Fantagraphics.
And Alan Lowe says, of Stacey, she's so young, I think Stacey is still growing up. No, the reason I asked the question, Stacey, is do you recall like other women creators reading as a younger?
No, and so that's why Wonder Woman was so important, and the fact that she was on TV, right? Linda Carter, that was I was like excited, right, to watch her. Like, there's our girl, she's our superhero. Supergirl was okay, but
I agree.
Yeah, but but yeah, and like my dad read comics, so I would read all his old comics. He had a lot of like Lone Ranger comics, but a lot of it was Spider-Man, you know. So, and then when I found out later that I'm named Stacey, then I was more interested. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because I didn't really think about stuff growing up. You know, I was a stupid kid. But you go back and look at it now, and you think about some of the stuff that influenced you. And I remember like Louise Simonsen, and you know, the name didn't mean anything to me at the time, but I've read so much of her stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Marie Severin.
Oh yes.
But again, it's just like I was just looking at the pretty pictures and the words, and it's not until I get older that you start thinking about who made this stuff.
Yeah, real people, real people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important to have women illustrators too, because you know, like Trina said, like otherwise you have all these guys with their sort of fantasy and their skimpily clad women, and it's like they're just objects; they're not people,
Yes.
you know. So that's important.
Drew says Marie was one of the best Hulk artists. Bite me.
She was really at her best with humor, you know, when she did the humor titles.
Alan says, for years growing up, I never knew Marie was a woman. I just remember seeing Severin as a byline. And see, that's kind of where I was at too. It's like you don't really, it doesn't really register as a younger kid. Did we freeze?
No, we're still here.
Okay. So I understand where Alan's coming from, but you know, it's interesting to look at back on it now and see like all these people that you know, like they were just names in books that didn't really, you know, I didn't know if they were men, women, you know, robots, whatever, you know. I was just
The first comic artist that I was really aware of was Wallace Wood because of the way he signed his name in those big Gothic letters. So you knew that whoever had drawn this was a man named Wood.
So, Alan Lowe points out that Severin was a byline in not Brand X.
Yes, that's what I meant when I said she was great at the humor titles. I think she liked the humor titles best too.
Okay, Alan Lowe's jumping in with a bunch of stuff here. Ramona Freyden.
Yes.
I hope I'm saying that right. Had Metamorpho.
Yes. And she is still with us and still going strong. I think she's about 95 now.
And this is probably a misconception that a lot of us had.
No, sister and brother. The talent ran in the family.
I have something to point out that people don't our generation doesn't really know who Pogo is, because I sure didn't.
Oh, I know who Pogo is.
But Pogo, is it Art Spiegelman, the creator?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, but his right-hand man was actually a member, he was a veteran from Hawaii, and he was with the Varsity Victory Volunteers, which is the central story of my movie, and his name was Henry Shikuma.
And
so
he was Walt Kelly's right-hand man?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Was he his assistant?
I kind of see. I didn't really know that either because there's not too much on him on Wikipedia. And so Ted Tsukiyama, one of the veterans, he would always, show me pictures of the Varsity Victory Volunteers, and he'd be like, "Oh, sorry, okay, well, I guess Walt Kelly's. Yeah, sorry, I don't know."
Yes, Walt Kelly.
Yeah, but yeah, Pogo. So if you look up Henry Shikuma, you'll probably see more of what I mean. But he did draw Pogo. And so Ted would tell me that, and I didn't know what that meant either. I was like, who the heck is Pogo?
I'd like to suggest you read Pogo. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's really, not only is the art wonderful, I mean, Walt Kelly is a great artist, but the stories and the writing and the style of writing is just so charming. There are these creatures, these woodland creatures that live in the swamp, the Okefenokee swamp, which is a real place.
Oh, huh.
And they each have personalities. Yes, the lettering. I think he did his own lettering.
That's Vincent Kukua.
Oh, really?
There was something about the animation too Maybe I should look this up.
Knows Alan. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up. Yeah, I think that's what I saw. What are you looking up, Stacey?
Henry Shikuma. Oh, there. We're among Kelly's assistants on the trip.
Yes.
Yeah. George
Yeah, I'm
Ward
sure.
and Henry
Yeah,
Shikuma.
Chuck Jones was a wonderful animator, but he didn't work in the right style. I can see where Walt Kelly hated it.
You're doing good there.
Vincent
Stop
Price.
motion version.
Vincent Price with a southern accent. I'd like to see that.
Oh, yeah. Where did I see that? Okay, yeah, I didn't see anything good about Hank Shikuma on Wikipedia. Like, where did I find that?
So Trina, since you were the groundbreaker, did you have anybody to look to? Were you looking to the male
No.
artists? Were you looking to other females? Were you
No,
just
I had
winging
no,
it?
I had no role models. I just simply went ahead and did it.
So with that in mind, how does it feel when the younger readers, the younger women come up to you and you're their role model?
Lovely. It feels great. I mean, I guess I actually did make a difference. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely made a difference. No doubt about that. What is this? Stacey, was Henry Shikuma in the 42nd?
I would say probably because he was in the Varsity Victory Volunteers, which was the forerunner of the 442. And so a lot of the VVV guys did go to the 442, but then they were pulled. And then they became part of the MIS, which is the Military Intelligence Service. So like all the guys in my movie, Akira Otani, Ted Tsukiyama, Bishop Fujitani, they were in the 442, well, actually, except for Bishop Fujitani, but they were in the 442 and then they were pulled to the MIS. So I want to say maybe. Sorry. Some of them did stay in the 442 though.
One of our other guests who will actually be on a panel tomorrow, Willie Ito. Have you read his Hello Maggie book?
I have it. I did not read it, but okay. I know he's actually doing like 6 more drawings of the Lost Battalion.
He's doing a revised edition, which has more. I think it's more than 6 pages.
I think it. Like
12 more pages, I think, and most of it's on the 442nd. John shared a link to the Pogo Stop motion animation if you want to check that out.
Thank you.
And then Alan asked, without other women artists as role models, did you have women artists that inspired your artwork? Maybe not in the industry, but just as artists in general, right?
Well, I had great parents, by the way. My mother taught me to read. She was a school teacher. She taught me to read when I was 4. And my father used to take me to our nearest museum growing up in Queens, New York. Our nearest museum was the Brooklyn Museum. And my father used to take me to the Brooklyn Museum. I loved all the paintings. And I had decided I was going to be a great artist and make beautiful oil paintings like the ones in the museum. What I didn't know at the time was that, or what I didn't notice, was that all the artists were men. I mean, there were very few. Now we know many more women artists, but in those days we didn't. At Frida Kahlo, for instance, everyone knows Frida Kahlo now, but we didn't know about Frida Kahlo when I was a kid. So there really weren't even any women artists that I knew about. And I didn't realize there was a difference. I just thought it was art, and it was what I wanted to do.
That's good. Going to the underground scene, who were some of your contemporaries at the time? Would that be R. Crumb? And
he was definitely a contemporary, yes.
I'm trying to think who else would be in there. Drew, if you're still watching, Drew's my trivia guy. He knows all.
Well, Art Spiegelman, Bill Griffith, lots of guys who you still heard of. who are still working.
Donna Barr. Do you know Donna Barr?
Donna came later.
Yeah.
Donna really. Hi, Donna.
She's watching.
Yes. Donna, when did you start? I think the 80s. Am I right?
Do you want me to invite Donna in?
Sure.
All right, hold on just a second. Donna, I'm going to send you the link.
Actually, it's ending, isn't it? So let's have a very quick Donna Barr, and then we can all thank everyone. And maybe there's some last-minute questions.
We'll let Donna Barr grill you.
I know that she's on a panel. Donna's on a panel. Is it tomorrow?
We did one earlier today.
Oh, that's the one. Okay.
Yep.
No, it was yesterday, and as usual, I got the time wrong. I should have been on here at 5. I apologize. I was looking.
I got the time wrong too, Donna.
I know. I know, and I got the time wrong. I should have been on here at 5. I apologize. I was looking.
I got the time wrong too, Donna.
I know. It was dreadful.
Hold on just a second. Donna, can you kill the stream that you're watching so we don't get the echo?
There we go. I got the right stream now. I got the right one.
Mute it or kill it.
There we go. I got it.
Okay.
No, Trina was saying I came later. It's just she met me later. I got the right one. Mute it or kill it. There we go. I got it.
Sorry.
That was a mess.
She still had the stream playing. That's why we could hear the echo. She did have, what was the motivation to keep you moving through the comic scene without any role models or female peers among your circle?
I just wanted to do comics. And my feeling about the guys who were not, who were just not including me, my feeling was just, well, the hell with them. I'll show them. That's really the motivating thing is I'll show them.
Not including That's how I felt about my movie.
Yeah, Donna, we're still getting the echo. So if you have the stream playing on your other device, just turn it off.
Yeah, but going back to what Trina was saying about the hell with them. If you want to do something, do it yourself. And just
you do it.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I did with my movie. And if you the film industry is dominated by men too. So,
yes. Oh God.
But because it was my project, it's like I'm the boss, so I'm hiring these people who I think have the right attitude and so but you just
when it comes to like I was saying about Trina, that it's not that I came later than them, we just hadn't met, and I'd been drawing and writing for a long time, and that's another thing, there was no way for people to meet.
Yes. All of this didn't exist. Zoom didn't exist.
Yeah. Although I would like to say something, we were talking in an earlier panel about the fact that with the U.S. mail, I had so many connections with other artists. We were doing APPAs and we were doing Flame Wars and everything through the mail and doing all kinds of weird things and it was like having it was like having email, and it was like having social media for us. It seemed so easy, but we were just flipping things back and forth with stamps in the mail.
Sure. And stamps were even cheaper then.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I mean, now we would think it was terribly, terribly hard to do. But back then we thought we were just, we had like the Bar Wars, which was a flame war, which had dozens of artists involved, and we were attacking each other's characters. And if you get a chance, go to the San Diego State University Special Collections, ask to see in the Donna Barr collection, ask to see Barb Rausch's pink folder, because in it is the beautiful paper drawings she did of her side of the flame war. You should see them.
It was wonderful.
You know what was in there? She was planning a wonderful, sexy pirate comic book. And the remainders left of that are in those Flame War sketches, and they are gorgeous. Mine that I did for her went missing. I don't know a lot of that stuff, but if you go to see that, they're like that thick with her drawings, pencil drawings that she just sent me in the mail. We didn't copy them, we didn't scan them, but she had this wonderful, sexy pirate novel.
I can just imagine.
You got to see it. They got it at San Diego. and San Diego State University Special Collections. Pam Jackson, of course, would be delighted to show it to you. And this is all we got left of it, but it was, we lost her and we lost that book, and it was, oh my God.
Great lost books. So look, it's been an hour and 5 minutes. Could we call this over?
We can.
I wonder if there's any last questions before we fold. Any last
We'll
questions?
solicit for questions. There's about 20-second delay, but we'll see if any questions come in. No, we'll see if any questions come in. But you have anything you want to plug? Any of you? Where to find you? Projects?
Oh, well, I'm on Facebook, and you can just ask me to friend you. Okay, thanks for sharing some of your stories. Yes.
Thank you,
Sandy Covington.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I just got the time wrong. Michael can tell you about my confusion of
No. I got the time wrong too. At 2:00 San Francisco time, I tried to connect, and of course it was impossible because I was 2 hours ahead of time.
You got ahead and I got afterwards. Oh, but in the future, of course, Michael says he's never going to do it again. Remember, I had one Clown Lake Comic Con, and
I'll
then
never do it again.
7 of them.
Next year in Hawaii.
I'm going to Maui. I swear to God, next year.
Okay.
So
thank you, everybody.
Stacey,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Say aloha.
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 Aloha.